Okay, in this video we're going to look at the design of polyurethane suspension bushes. Now, frequent complaints about PU bushes range from squeaking, bad ride quality, or even wishbone failure, and to be fair, a lot of that criticism is justified, and it's really down just to bad design. Now, we're at the rear of an MX-5 looking at the upper wishbone, and at the moment they've got PowerFlex bushes installed which are about 4 years old. Now, if I try and rotate the suspension arm, we can clearly see what the problem is. Now, to actually get it to move, I have to put a lot of force into the suspension arm. We've actually got some really bad stick and shift behaviour. Now, the worrying thing is I've actually had to untorque the fitting hardware to enable me just to be able to move it with one hand. Now, if I had that torqued up to the proper specs, I would need a lot of force and two hands to actually get that wishbone to shift. So what we actually need to do is pop the wishbone out and have a look at the bushes on the bench and see if we can identify what the problems are. Now we've removed the wishbone, we can have a look at the suspension bushes a bit more closely. Now, these are designed as a bearing rather than a bonded rubber bush. So we've got two components. We've got a central crush tube and a polyurethane bush. Now, once the wishbone is all bolted up, this crush tube is fixed in position and it doesn't rotate. And so the rotation of the wishbone is only allowed by the fact that this rubber bush can rotate around the outside of the crush tube. So we have a look at the bush in situ. You see there the central crush tube. So you may be able to see that the bush material extends about 1/2 millimetre past the end of the crush tube. And on the other side, we've probably got the same, probably about 1/2 millimetre there. So when this is all bolted up into the subframe, all this extra material is going to load onto the subframe housing, and that's going to result in massive friction, and so you get this stick and shift behaviour. If we have a look at the bush that we took out, we can actually see some markings on the right hand side. Now, that clean area on the left hand side, that is where the material has all been squashed inside the subframe housing. Now, there's a second problem. It's not really a problem if it was designed correctly, but the fact that this bearing face is completely flat. So we've got a lot of surface area that butts up inside the subframe housing, and because we've got growth beyond the central crush tube, we do get a huge amount of friction because of this large surface area. We'll actually have a look at that in a bit more detail when we look at the lower wishbones, which do actually have this completely flat face on the SuperPro bushes. So what we really need to do is get the wishbone cleaned up, pop in the SuperPro bushes that we're going to replace these with, and then just have a look how that all works. Okay, now we've got the SuperPro bushes installed in this wishbone, we can just have a look at the ends and see where the material is in relation to the end of the crush tube. And on both bushes and both sides, we've got a flush fitting, which is exactly what we're looking for. Also, there's been some attention to detail with the end of these bushes as well. Because the upper wishbones don't see the same sort of loads that the lower ones do, we can actually have a smaller bearing surface. You can see there we've got this conical shape and then a very, very small bearing surface of that flat surface next to the crush tube. Now that allows two things. Firstly, it keeps the design low friction, but it also allows the bush to move as well. And we'll come on to that a bit later when we look at noise, vibration and harshness. So before we pop these in, I'm just going to have a look at the inside of the bush where the crush tube runs, and we're going to have a look at the knurling inside there and see how that compares to the Powerflex ones that we've removed. Okay, we're just going to have a look at the internal bore of both of these bushes. So firstly the Powerflex, and as you can see it's just a smooth bore. Now on the SuperPro we've got this diamond pattern cut into the surface. Now this knurling is added after the bush is cast, and it's important for two reasons. Firstly, it enables the waterproof grease to be retained around the crush tube. So not only does that add up to a low friction design, but it also stops the crush tube from rusting. Now second, we've got probably 75 to 80% less surface area around the crush tube compared to the Powerflex bush with the smooth bore. So combined with the grease, this knurling adds up to an ultra low friction design. Now I'm just going to show you how the grease is retained in this knurling compared to how the grease gets pushed out of the Powerflex bush. Okay, we're just going to demonstrate how important this knurling is on the inside of the SuperPro bush and how it retains the grease. So what we're just going to do is just going to load up each bush with some moly grease. Now I'm only using moly grease because of the colour, because it's black, so we can see clearly where the grease is going. So first of all we've got the Powerflex, and we don't have any grease in there at the moment, so we're just going to load it from the bottom surface. There we go. And perhaps spread it up a little bit more. Okay, so we see at the top of the bush there isn't any grease, and at the bottom there is. So we're just going to push that onto the crush tube. Now we do expect to see grease get ejected because we've overfilled it. So if we just push that on. Okay, and if we do the same with the SuperPro, show you that it's empty to start with. Now I've put quite a lot of grease in here, so you can see. So at the bottom. Okay, we're just going to push that onto the crush tube. Okay, so you see both bushes, you've got some excess grease on the top of the crush tube as that's been wiped out. So we just pop this Powerflex one out. And just have a look. Now we've actually pretty much wiped that completely free of grease inside there. And if we just do the same with the SuperPro one, and as you can see there's still a lot of grease in there. Now perhaps at the top I haven't actually installed the grease properly, so it's important to actually wipe the complete area with grease, but I wanted to show you how we've got a difference between the area at the bottom is full of grease compared to the area at the top. Okay, so we bolted up the rear wishbone with the SuperPro bushes in. I've torqued it up, but for the skeptics out there, I'm just going to re-torque it. It calls for about 60-65 Newton meters, which is about 45 pound force feet. So unfortunately my digital torque wrench has run out of batteries, so we've just got the big old snap-on. Okay, so I'm just going to have to put the camera down for a second. And then on the other side, okay, so we're torqued up on that one. Right, so remember with the power flex installed, I pretty much needed my whole body weight to shift this wishbone, but with this one we're just going to use just a finger. So under that and up and down we go. So that's exactly what we're looking for. Nice, smooth, low friction movement from the wishbone, so we can even grab it, and so we don't have any sticks in there at all. It's just lovely and smooth. So if we have a look at the bush inside the subframe housing, you can probably see that conical design and then the very, very small bearing surface on the end. Obviously the subframe as well has been greased. That's part of the installation. So just one more time. So that's really, really nice. So what I'm going to do is just have a look at the fronts. I've already done the fronts. Similar sort of design, conical bush at the end. And then we move to the lower wishbones, which have a full face bearing surface. So the SuperPros have actually got another unique feature to ensure that the bushes are the perfect fit. So we're looking at the front upper wishbone now, and we're just going to do the skeptic test. So we've got 95 pounds force per foot, and we're just going to torque that up. Okay, so that's all done. So we notice that on these bushes we've got the OE washer on each side, or sorry, each end, and then we've got a second washer on the inside of the bushes here. Okay, so again, same sort of idea with the rears, just a finger or a thumb, and literally just move that up and down very freely. So again, nice smooth, low friction design. So we're just going to have a look at the front lowers now, pull those apart and do the same. Right, so we're at the front lower wishbones now with the PowerFlex still installed. On the rear bush I've actually loosened off the alignment bolt, and then the front is actually tight, so if we just grab the wishbone and try and rotate it. So you can hear, first of all, we've got some squeaking there. And a fair bit of stick shift again. So again, we're looking for some improvement on that from the SuperPros, so let's just get that wishbone out, perhaps look at the bushes and pop the SuperPros in. Okay, with the wishbone out we can now have a look at this bush, and this is a really good example of a bad bush. So what I've done there is push the crush tube flush at that end. If we just turn it over and have a look at the other one, we can see there's a massive difference between the end of the crush tube and the end of the bush. And, well, there's not much more we can say about that really, apart from let's just get out and get some decent bushes in there. Okay, now we've got the SuperPro bushes installed. We can just have a quick look at the ends, and we can see that we're pretty much flush at the end there. And just checking the other one. And again, the same on that one. So all we need to do is just pop this wishbone back, get the alignment bolts torqued up, and then we can do our little rotation test. Okay, we've got the front lower wishbone back in now. The alignment bolts have been torqued up, but just so I'm not trying to dupe anybody, we're just going to give them a quick bit of monkey muscle. You can see that they're not going anywhere on those. So let's just see how this works. Okay, so that's pretty standard for the SuperPros. We've got a nice, slick, stiction-free movement. So I just want to go back to the bench and just show you a couple of other features of the SuperPros, and then we can wrap this ramble up. Okay, so we're going to just have a quick look at some of the attention to detail on the SuperPro bushes. So if you see, this is just what they call a cotton reel design. So you've got two flanges on the end of the bush. And as you see there, that here we've got a nice 45-degree chamfer. Now that chamfer there matches the chamfer in the wishbone, so that's a nice little addition. And again, we've got on the outside, again we've got another 45-degree chamfer there. And that actually means that then this bearing surface is exactly the same diameter as the wishbone housing, which means that when it gets loaded dynamically, we haven't got any extra material falling or being unsupported outside the housing. So if we look on the PowerFlex, we've got no internal chamfer at all, nor on the outside. So we've actually got some extra unwanted material. I was also talking about getting these single piece bushes to the right length, and how they do this is that the bushes are cast into the mould, but they're actually overfilled. So once the bush is ejected from the mould, this then goes onto a lathe, and as you can see, you can see the tool marks there where the bush has been cut down to size. So that's a secondary operation, and obviously then adding the knurling inside is a third operation. So to produce a bush like this is actually quite expensive. Whereas if we look at the Powerflex ones, even on the lower wishbones, they're all the split variety. So that's a lot cheaper to produce and a lot easier to fit, but in terms of performance, longevity, you really want to be looking at a single piece bush. Now, we spoke briefly about NVH, noise, vibration and harshness, and what annoys me a little bit sometimes about products is that they are described as race or track, and generally that means they're hard or stiff, or someone hasn't bothered to put any R&D into the product, and it basically, what do you expect? It's for a racetrack. The nice thing about the SuperPro bushes are that they're primarily a road bush, but will give you performance or extra performance on the track. Now, to do that, they have to take into consideration reducing noise, vibration or harshness. Now, they actually say that if you replace brand new bushes with their SuperPros, you won't get any extra NVH, or even on some models you actually get less. So this is a different material that Powerflex use. This is on the lower rear wishbone, and it's the outside bushes that connect to the upright or hub. There is actually black rather than the normal purple, but they're actually very, very plasticky. I can't actually deform them much at all, whereas the other Powerflex one, I've got a little bit of deformation there. So actually these feel quite plasticky compared to the fairly rubbery feeling of the SuperPros. Now, the only way to combat NVH is to allow the bush to move. Now, these bushes are described as resilient. Basically, they want to bounce back to their natural position. So when I compress this bush, it's pushing back into its natural position. So that's really good for NVH, because the only thing between a pothole and your bum is essentially the bushes and the suspension, the springs and dampers. So if you make this joint completely rigid, you're just going to get a huge amount more transmissibility into the platform, which is going to increase your NVH. But by allowing it to load and move, you can reduce that. But the important thing is that the movement is very, very well controlled. Okay, so there's no vibration when it comes back to its steady state. So that's where the extra performance comes. Now, the reason why you don't want to go with a hard bush like this has got very, very low resilience. The reason why we had a look at these Powerflex bushes to start with is that the rear wheel on the customer's car had a really bad wobble. I could actually tow it out a few degrees with my hand when it was on the lift. Now, I thought it was perhaps a bearing, the wheel bearing, but when I looked closer I could see that as I wobbled the wheel we was getting some moisture being ejected from the bush. Now, what's happened, because that's got a really low resilience, the bush has actually taken a set. Now, it's taken a set in its loaded state, so what we've got is now a crush tube that doesn't actually fit properly and allows wobble in the bush. So when someone tries to sell you a bush because it's harder or stiffer, really they're just talking a lot of rubbish, because that's not what you want. Well, you're going to have to replace the bushes quite quickly, because that's literally going to take a set and cause the alignment to go all over the place as it loads up. So really I should sort of end with a pithy conclusion. It's probably just this, that if you're going to change your suspension bushes, don't waste your money on eBay tat. In reality, how much engineering do you think has gone into a set of bushes that are going to cost you £100? Now, changing the bushes on an MX-5 is a bit of a pain in the bum, so it's probably not the sort of job you're going to want to do twice. So obviously my advice is to use SuperPros, or don't bother changing them in the first place. So hopefully we've shown you that SuperPro bushes are properly engineered on every level and superior to other bushes on the market. And it's probably the reason why they can offer a lifetime warranty, the sort of warranty that doesn't get excluded if you decide to build yourself a race car or take your car off-road. Those situations are still covered under their warranty. So hopefully I haven't bored you too much, haven't been too deadpan, and just like to thank Mr. T for the loan of his car.